Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and hi if you're new here, I'm Jade, and today I thought I would talk about some books that I'm really looking forward to that are coming out in the first half of the year. The reason I decided to stick to the first half is a lot in the second half of the year don't have like dates yet, and I figured I can do another one mid-year for what I'm looking forward to the end of the year, because there's quite a lot, and then I just thought I would pick my top sort of 15 that I am personally anticipating. I do just want to apologize for the lighting. It's not the best. I don't usually film in the evening for that reason, but it's been the holidays, it's been crazy, and I've just found a little bit of free time to finally record something. And I had, a few ideas of things that I wanted to record, but I figured this was a good one because anything that's more like summarizing my reading year, well, there's still a few days left, and I don't want to leave any books out that I'm still yet to read if they would fit into any of my planned videos. So I thought, let's sit down, have a chat, and let me tell you what books I am looking forward to. And as I sat here to record, my cat has sat on my lap, so if you suddenly see movement over here, it might be him staying up, but he's fast asleep right now. So I have got my trusty iPad out so that I can give you a really good sort of summary of the books, and I'm going to try and go in chronological order. So the first book that I just think sounds like something I'm going to love, and that's why I'm really looking forward to this, is Graceless Heart by Isabel Ibañez. Oh look, he's leaving me already. We're just going to sit there in the camera and ruin my focus. Anyway, it is Graceless Heart by Isabel Ibañez. I am sorry if that is not how you pronounce the surname, but I feel like Ibañez feels kind of correct. Please let me know if you know. But it is an adult historical fantasy romance, which I love a little bit of historical fantasy romances. A Song to Drown Rivers was a favorite book of mine in 2024, and I just feel like that was mainly towards the historical fiction side. I don't know how much this is going to have, but I do love that mix generally. I also believe this is going to be a standalone, and I just feel like everything is a series right now. And don't get me wrong, I love so many series and I've got so many to read on my TBR, but sometimes it's just nice to just have a book and know that you can finish it, and then you haven't got to like keep going when there's so much other things to read. So this book is set in 15th century Italy and is about a girl that enters a competition in order to save her brother. Then she gets entangled with like this immortal family and their heir, and in this world the magic is forbidden and the Pope wages war against it. So I think it has a little bit of that enemies to lovers trope in there. It just sounds like something that I'm going to really love, so it's definitely one on my radar. Oh, and that is out on the 13th of January, so very soon. So the next book I'm really intrigued by is called Half Is Age by Jeanette McCurdy. I'm not 100% sure on the genre of this. I have seen it listed as a dark comedy, which if you've read Jeanette McCurdy's autobiography, that kind of seems fitting. She made her autobiography quite humorous, even though it was actually very dark and she had some very traumatic things happen to her when she was young. So this kind of seems like the thing she could write. This is fiction. This is her sort of fiction debut, I believe. But I adored her autobiography so much. Like, I just was really absorbed into it, and I thought she was a really good writer, even though she is writing about her own life. So I'm just really intrigued to see what she brings to the sort of fiction table. So this does cover a bit of a taboo subject, I will say, before I get into it too much. It's about a girl who falls for her married teacher. So it isn't going to be for everyone. Definitely not. Actually, when I was at high school, a girl had an affair with a teacher in my school. So I feel like you shouldn't ever avoid these topics. They are real. These things happen. It just depends how dark it gets. But I think if it's a dark comedy and it's done right, I think it could be really good. So I think this girl pursues a relationship with this older married teacher, and it goes from there. I don't know much more, to be honest. I don't want to look into it too much. I think I just want to read it and see what I think for myself. If it romanticizes the idea too much, maybe it'll be a bit much for me. But I do think that there is a dark thriller sort of aspect to these stories because they happen in real life. And, Jeanette McCurdy, as we know, went through a lot when she was younger. So I'm just really intrigued to see how this turns out. And that book gets released on the 20th of January. Also releasing on the 20th of January is The Elsewhere Express by Samantha Sotto. I read her book Watermoon this year, and I really enjoyed that. Like, it wasn't up there with like my best reads of the year, but I still really loved it. And this one sounds just as whimsical, just as intriguing. So it's definitely one I want to pick up. I also think the cover is beautiful. So it's a fantasy novel. It's about a magical train that appears to people that are feeling a little bit lost or lonely and sort of gives them another chance. And specifically, it follows a woman called Rhea who meets a guy on the train called Q, and they are navigating the sort of whimsical world that the train takes them through. However, there's always a twist to these stories and something a little darker. There is some stowaway on the train that threatens it all. The descriptions in Watermoon were absolutely beautiful, and that's what makes me also want to pick this up. I thought the writing was really, really lovely. I just love the whimsical vibe of the whole book, so I'm thinking this one is going to be somewhat similar, but obviously a different, unique story. So the next book that I really want to pick up is by Ali Hazelwood, and it's called Two Can Play. It's actually already released, but only as an audiobook, and the physical copies or ebook is not releasing until the 10th of February. I've never really heard of a book being released as an audio way before the release of, the physical book. I want to say the audio is 2024, so it's actually quite an older book. Maybe you've listened to it. Let me know if it's any good. But I'm just really looking forward to having like a physical copy. I don't do a lot of audiobooks occasionally, but usually for like rereads and things like that. I don't feel like I absorb well enough otherwise. But from what I gather, we follow two characters that are working in video game design, and then they go away on this like retreat, I'm guessing for work. And then they, fall in love with each other, I guess. So I guess it's another sort of like rivals to lovers, enemies to lovers type vibe, which I feel like Ali Hazelwood is very good for writing. I first read Ali Hazelwood this year, so I've currently read The Love Hypothesis and Love Theoretically. So I don't know, this one just sounds like really intriguing. I've really loved Ali Hazelwood so far this year. And then the next one I'm looking forward to is a little different, but I have really been into my cozy fantasies this year. Like, I think that's why the Elsewhere Express kind of intrigues me. I'd call it more whimsical fantasy, but there's still a coziness about that sort of whimsicality. But this particular cozy fantasy is called Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter by Heather Fawcett. I just have to say, my hair is so static. I'm sorry if it is all over my face in this video. But this cozy fantasy is about a cat rescue manager in the 1920s who has to team up with her landlord to protect the shelter from magical threats. Now, if you didn't already know, I am a huge cat lover, so this is probably what's attracting to me the most. I love animals, especially cats, and it being about a cat shelter, I mean, it just sounds like me. I believe it sort of has a bit of the grumpy sunshine trope, so if that's not for you, you might not like it, but I think it just sounds really cute and adorable, and I'm intrigued to see how the magic is going to like relate to a cat shelter and things like that. It's definitely a little bit different, and that releases on the 17th of February. And moving on to the 24th of February, we then have And Now Back to You by B.K. Borison. So this book is actually the second book in the Heartstrings series, so First Time Caller from this year is the first part of Heartstrings, but from what I gather, it's still quite a unique story. Like, you don't have to read them, they don't follow the same characters. I'm wondering if there's gonna be like a little tie-in to past characters, kind of like, Abby Jimenez and that often do in their books. So we will see. But this book is about two rival meteorologists that have to end up working together through this snowstorm, and therefore it's an enemies to lovers romance. I don't know, plot-wise, it feels very like Ali Hazelwood to me. But I really, really enjoyed First Time Caller this year. It was my first time reading B.K. Borison, and therefore I just kind of look forward to continuing with this series. But like I said, I don't think you have to have read First Time Caller to read And Now Back to You. So don't feel like you're diving into something you have to really commit to. But I just really enjoyed First Time Caller, so why not give this next one a chance? I will say I read Good Spirits by B.K. Borison, the new Christmas novel. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it as much as First Time Caller. So we will see when this one releases how much I love this one. So skipping ahead to March now, to the 24th, which is 2 days before my birthday, so this is going to be really good timing. It's going to be Beneath by Ariel Sullivan. This is one of my top anticipated books for the whole entire year, I would say. Obviously, I'm only addressing the first half of the year in this video, but I would say it's definitely in my top probably 5 anticipated books for the whole entire year. So Ariel Sullivan wrote a book called Conform, which came out in October, which is a kind of dystopian romance. I suppose there's a little bit of a fantasy element to it, a little bit of sci-fi. And it was by far one of my best books of this whole entire year. I adore it. and I'm so happy to already be getting something else set in the same world. However, this is a prequel, so what I have gathered she is doing is she is writing some separate series, but they all interlink in the same world. So Conform was book 1 of that series, and then Beneath is book 1 of this sort of prequel series. So it's set in an earlier time in the same world. So this is a dystopian romance novel, and it is set after a nuclear fallout. So they're basically in an underground city after this nuclear fallout, and we follow a girl called Sasha, who is being trained to be sent on a mission up to the surface. And, you know, while she's being trained, there's a bit of a thing with her commander, I believe. So if you haven't read Conform, I would highly recommend, if this sounds interesting to you, go and read Conform first. It might not matter what order you read these in, but I don't know. And if you want to be ready for this one, I'd say just read Conform because it was so good. Conform does end on a cliffhanger. So am I a little bit annoyed that we're getting a prequel rather than the sequel right now? A little bit, but obviously Conform's only just come out. So the fact we're getting something else in this world already is amazing. I have heard that she wrote these quite a long time ago, so she's quite far ahead, which is probably why we're getting releases close together, which I'm not upset about. So I'm really hoping for the sequel of Conform to come out soon, but the prequel is definitely up there on my list. I'm hoping this is going to be up there with my best reads of the year, just like Conform was this year for me. So also on the 24th of March is a new Abby Jimenez release. This year was my first year reading Abby Jimenez, and I made it through the whole of the Part of Your World trilogy, and I also read her newest novel, Say You'll Remember Me. So on the 24th of March, we get The Night We Met, and that is the second book in the series of Say You'll Remember Me, but it is a standalone, kind of like she did with the Part of Your World trilogy, that you can read them as standalones in any order. She's doing the same thing here, from what I gather. I will say You'll Remember Me, I didn't love as much as the Part of Your World trilogy, but what I did think it did really well was take some really sort of like deep family dynamic sort of situations and really capture them. Like I really did feel something when reading the book, so I'm kind of hoping that this one might do the same thing. From what I gather, we follow a girl called Larissa, and it all starts when she's been to a concert and she's offered a ride home by 2 different guys who are friends, I believe. She takes a ride with one, then ends up dating them, but it's kind of the other one, I think, that she was more sort of like meant to be with. And so it kind of leads into this kind of like complicated thing where she feels she went home with the wrong guy, and it navigates all of that, is what I gather. It's a bit of what if she'd made the other decision. So I think that sounds like a really cute concept, and I always enjoy Abby Jimenez's writing. So yes, another one I'm looking forward to, obviously in the romance genre this time. And then on the 31st of March, we have The Faraway Inn by Sarah Beth Durst. From my understanding, this does not relate to The Spell Shop or The Enchanted Greenhouse that I have already read by her. I think this is its own standalone, and it sounds like the same kind of vibe with that sort of cozy fantasy element. So this is a young adult fantasy, and it's about a girl who goes to stay with her great aunt, and her aunt runs an inn. And when our girl Calissa goes to stay with her aunt at this inn, she finds out that it's actually very magical and has some sort of otherworldly guests. And there are secrets that she has to uncover in order to protect it. So it just sounds like a really cute, cozy story, just like The Spell Shop was. So I love that book. I just thought it was really nice. It felt like a warm hug as books go. And I just feel like you can't really go wrong with them. So I'm looking forward to trying this one. And then on the 7th of April, we have Rites of the Starling by Devney Perry. This is the second book in a series. It is the second book to of Shield of Sparrows. I spoke about that quite a lot on my channel. If you're new here, you might not know that, but I love that book. I have seen quite a lot of criticism of people saying it's slow and that they've DNF'd it, but for me, honestly, it was really definitely up there with one of my best reads of the year. And so I am really, really eagerly awaiting this sequel, and I'm so glad that we're getting it so soon. Because it is a sequel, I don't want to talk too much about the supposed upcoming plot in case you haven't read the first book. I don't want to include any spoilers here, but it is a sort of romantasy series, and it's a slow burn romance in the first book. So I'm going to talk a bit more of Shield of Sparrows so that you know what Shield of Sparrows is about in case you haven't read it and you are intrigued. But Shield of Sparrows is a very slow burn romance fantasy, and for me, it was just perfect how the whole thing played out. The main character kind of reminded me of Merida from Brave somehow. I just think she had a great personality, and I just love all the characters in the novel. So yeah, I don't want to say too much because, as I said, I can't really talk about the sequel, and that is the book we're actually referring to, is the sequel that I'm excited for. But if you haven't tried it and you like your own fantasy series, please give this one a go. Unless you hate slow burns, then maybe not. But for me, slow burn romance is perfection because I love to feel that kind of like sexual tension there. I don't like it just going, boop, it's gone. Like, I like feeling that kind of, longing. I love longing in a book. Also, on the 7th of April, a book is being released called The Book Witch by Meg Shaffer. I have not actually read any books by her, but honestly, the title just captures my attention because books with witch in the title tend to be something I enjoy. I know I'm generalizing. And I also love books about books, and the concept of a book witch just sounds really good. So it's about a witch called Rainey who can actually jump into novels to save these stories from collapse. And then one day her grandfather disappears and she has to team up with a forbidden love interest of a fictional detective. And then obviously they try and solve the mystery of her missing grandfather. So yeah, I just think this story sounds really intriguing. It sounds different. I don't think I've read anything that's super similar in plot in my head. And yeah, I just think it sounds like a really cute concept. And obviously I kind of like the idea with the fact that she's falling in love with, a fictional character, because I feel like most of us as readers can relate to that. And then also in April on the 28th, we have a new TJ Klune novel called We Burn So Bright. I have only read the one TJ Klune novel, which is The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I read this year, which I loved. And I know, and I am fully aware that there are other TJ Klune books I need to pick up. But this one sounds really cute. It's advertised as a contemporary fiction, and it is about a older gay couple as they make a road trip. However, as they make this road trip, there is a black hole that threatens them. So there is like an upcoming apocalypse, and they kind of reflect on a lot of their life and their marriage. And I think it's about finding meaning before death. And I always find that a very, I guess, sort of dark, but also sort of endearing topic. I feel like there's a lot to learn from it. I feel like us as humans always have this curiosity and maybe fear, understandably, of death. And I think I kind of enjoy reading those kind of thought-provoking novels, and I feel like this is going to be one of them. And the next book I'm going to mention is Broken Dove by Dani Francis. I have seen 2 dates floating around for this book, so I'm not 100% sure on which is the release. Goodreads says the 5th of May, Amazon says the 12th, but early mid-May, I guess. Now, Broken Dove by Dani Francis is also a sequel. It is the sequel to Silver Elite that came out this year and became quite a viral novel, I would say, around the same time as Shield of Sparrows, actually. It's kind of weird that we're getting the sequels at the same time as well. I will say I wouldn't put Silver Elite in my top reads of the year, but I still enjoyed it, and it ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, so I'm definitely intrigued enough that I am looking forward to this sequel to continue and see what I think of it. It's not my most anticipated sequel release of the year by any means, but I am looking forward to it. And I know a lot of people really love Silver Elite, so let me know if you loved Silver Elite and this is on your top radar, because it's definitely still something I want to read. I feel like the end of the book really did sort of redeem a lot of Silver Elite for me. It was more just the romance. I wasn't quite feeling or believing as much as I wanted to in that book, but I'm hoping it's going to really develop through this one. Just in case you don't know anything about Silver Elite and you're wondering if you would like this series, I will say, as I described it, it's sort of like dystopian romance. It's about a world that's sort of divided into two. There are like two factions called mods, modifieds, and primes. The modified sort of have like slight powers, and primes are people that are immune to this toxin that has been released that has given people these powers. The primes view the mods as dangerous, and there is a complete rivalry and sort of war between the two sides. But essentially primes are kind of winning. It's a little bit of a threat, and our main character, Ren, is a mod, and she actually gets caught and has to try and hide her powers. And then we get a bit of an enemies to lovers story. But that's a very, very brief overview. But look it up if it sounds interesting to you. But yeah, I am looking forward to the sequel to see what happens next, because as I said, a little bit of a cliffhanger at the end of the first one. So the next book that I am really looking forward to, and it is probably my most anticipated book of the whole entire year, because it was probably my most anticipated of this year, but it got delayed, and that is The Ballad of Fallen Dragons by Sarah A. Parker. That is the second book to When the Moon Hatched in the Moonfall series, and I adored When the Moon Hatched. I have read some very mixed things on that book. Like, I have seen some very mixed opinions, some people saying the world building was too slow, but honestly for me, I loved it. It was only the prologue of that book that I was a bit like, oh my god. but then I loved it. Khan from the first book is up there with one of my top book boyfriends, I tell you. So yeah, if you've been anticipating this book just as much as me, you have probably been watching the date get pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, but it's currently staying at the 19th of May as I am recording this video, and I am praying it doesn't move again. I feel like it's moved back so many times now, we should hopefully get it when it says, because I'm so looking forward to it. No pressure on the writer though. If she needs more time, we get more time again, but honestly, I am so excited for this book. Again, as it is a sequel, I can't say too much, but what I will say is in the first book we follow Rave and Khan, and honestly I love all the characters in this book. Like, it's just written to perfection for me. There are some really good scenes, the story is really intriguing, it is a romantasy in case I didn't mention that, but yeah, I highly recommend it. I love anything with the idea of dragons as well, so yeah, I just think there's some beautiful imagery in the book. Like, the way it's written is amazing. And then my final pick for some of the most anticipated reads I have for the first half of the year is a new book by Matt Haig called The Midnight Train. So it is set in the same universe as A Midnight Library, if you didn't gather, being that it's called The Midnight Train. I have to say, because it is about a train and it does sound a little bit whimsical, it does remind me of the Elsewhere Express that's coming out that I mentioned that I'm looking forward to in January, but hopefully they have very different vibes. It's kind of weird they're both coming out in the same year, but both writers are great at that kind of thought-provoking, whimsical thing. But in this book, we follow Wilbur, who is a man who boards this train to go and revisit his past. He specifically wants to go back to his honeymoon with his wife and change things that he regrets, but he obviously at the same time risks like changing everything badly. So I guess it's one of those stories where going back in time, sort of time travel and its consequences, you know, that it's going to explore that, which I always find a really interesting concept. You know, I grew up as very much a huge Charmed fan, and there was always the stress that if they went back in time, they had to be careful not to be seen and change the past, you know, beyond the thing they were really intending to change, and that it could really have bad consequences with time travel. And I feel like this is going to explore the same thing, and I'm a sucker for that trope. I love exploring that kind of thing. So there we have it. They are my 15 most anticipated reads of the year. I'm sorry I couldn't talk about all of them in much detail just because of the fact a lot of them are sequels, but please look up those series if they intrigue you, because honestly, if I'm looking forward to the sequel, I feel like the first one was definitely worth a read. A lot of those sequels are in the sort of fantasy romance kind of genre, so if that's not your thing, maybe not. But yeah, I feel like I've covered a sort of good mix of genres here. I have sort of noticed I'm lacking a little bit in thrillers, even though I do read quite a lot. But I feel like with thrillers, I don't necessarily anticipate them quite in the same way, even though I do enjoy reading them. Let me know if there are any big thrillers coming out in the first half of the year that you're like, you need to get on this, you need to read it. Let me know, because yeah, I just feel like I wasn't really coming across that much when I was looking things up. Whereas a lot of these I've been anticipating for a while and they're just there in my head, or something I've come across, whether I've applied for an ARC and not got it and things like that. So yeah, let me know if there's any books that I've missed that you're really looking forward to, and we will see what I think of a lot of these books this year. Will I get around to all of them this year? Probably not, because I need to be clearing off my massive TBR, but hopefully, you know, we will find things and it will be enjoyable, because yeah, I have high hopes for books this year, I've got to say. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed watching. As I said, let me know what you're looking forward to, and I will see you again real soon. Bye!